Today's sermon addresses the following of the UU7 principles. Principle number 3, we affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. And principle 4, we affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The talk today is titled Alone Together and will be presented by Randy Schwalbe. Randy is no stranger to the podium, but he is stranger than most. And in these strange times we are in, it is all but reaffirming that we hear what he has to say. Take it away, little brother.
Okay. All right, am I on? Good. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Uh-oh.
Somebody needs to mute.
The weather is bliss. The Central Coast is beautiful. Mary and I are healthy. We are eating well and living in paradise. And yet, the world is literally falling apart. Unlike most of the horrific disasters we have witnessed within our lifetimes, this one is directly impacting everyone. And it is occurring in slow motion. The saving grace is technology. Without it, we would not be able to stay in touch. But then again, most of us would never even have known about it until it was too late. Thanks to the state of communications in today's world, we have not lost touch, at least not visually or audibly. And it is fortunate that we have had lots of practice with this type of communication since its inception. We are very accustomed to phone calls, emails, texting, Facebook, and Skype. But for the foreseeable future, our option of physical contact, let alone close proximity, has been denied. And we feel a great sense of loss because of it. As much as we are not sure how this pandemic will play out, we have every reasonable expectation that our social discourse, as we once knew it, will return, but likely a bit altered. Maybe consuming less energy by staying home will show us a glimpse of the benefits promoted by environmental justice causes. Maybe a greater awareness of health and safety will reduce the number of visits to the doctor's office. Maybe the temporary loss of a hectic schedule will garner a greater appreciation of meditating, taking hikes, and appreciating the simple pleasures of life. I could go on, but we all know that while trying to focus on the positives, there's that elephant in the room just sitting there staring at us. And we are nervously staring in return, wondering when it will let us have our future back. In the meantime, there are thousands who will still report to work every day, and in many cases, literally every day. First responders, medical teams, social workers, supply chain personnel, and government agencies working to resolve this pandemic and support those in need. Again, this pandemic is occurring in slow motion, so the battle will not end after 2 or 3 days, followed by months and years of cleanup. We know how all that works, but we don't know how this works. We see the models, but they are shifting and changing almost daily. We wonder just when the right time will be for getting that all clear signal. Too soon, we risk another surge of victims. Too late, the cure may prove more deadly. But we have no choice than to leave it in the hands of the experts. So no matter how you walk in life, one thing I'm certain about is that the best minds in the world are on this. After all, what could possibly be more important than resolving this pandemic? So, while we wait in isolation, we, the worship committee, felt the strong urge to leverage the ever-expanding communications technology in order to resume our Sunday services. It kind of reminds me of someone who pours a concrete driveway over what once was a garden. And lo and behold, several years later, a little green plants spring up through the inevitable cracks in the slab. That's us, a persistent little weed. Boy, I hope no one comes by with a spray bottle of Roundup. Admittedly, we were not as quick on the draw as other churches. Many churches suspended their in-person services just about the same time we suspended ours in mid-March. But most of the churches quickly found a way to hold services during their normal Sunday morning timeframe. I soon discovered churches were providing virtual services by one of two common approaches. One of these approaches involves recording the entire service, including the hymn sings and announcements, along with the readings and the sermon, then posting this video on YouTube. The service itself is then promoted to its membership via email and the church bulletin. The other approach, the one employed by our sister church in Slow, uses Zoom to broadcast the minister speaking live, either from home or from the dais to an empty sanctuary. Also, the minister would Zoom share announcement slides as well as lyrics to the hymns and pre-recorded music entries previously posted on YouTube. After much introspection, I found these strategies unfulfilling. Something was missing. Of course, it did not take me very long to figure out what, but when it hit me, I thought, of course, the answer was sitting right there on our walls, our website, and embedded in each of our services, the 7 principles, the affirmation, and the doxology. But before I continue with the answer, a disclaimer. I do not intend to pass a value judgment on how we worship versus how other denominations worship. It is not for me to espouse what is right for all. It comes down to personal values. I intend to merely illustrate the difference. The UU method of worship is fundamentally different than that of the monotheistic religions, namely Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Those religions employ a set of creeds and a leader to guide its followers down a predetermined path in search of spirituality. Case in point, during the late 90s, my mother-in-law became physically unable to attend Mass on Sunday mornings. Fortunately, Mary was the soloist at a nearby Christian Science church in Long Beach. So I would drop off Mary and then take her mother to Mass at St. Anthony's. Now, this church was indeed a small version of a cathedral, seating around 300. And needless to say, most of the pews were occupied every Sunday. But the moment we walked in the sanctuary, it was eerily quiet. Other than the low murmur of ushers seating the parishioners, no one talked before or during the service, and very little afterward as well. Here were over 250 people, all on one path, not talking to each other, but paying close attention to the leader. That's when it hit me. The way we behave on Sunday mornings is the exact opposite. Starting about a half hour before service, the noise level in our sanctuary is enough to keep Mary and Jan from rehearsing any longer. But that's okay, they arrive earlier to get their work done. By 9:55, the decibel level is close to a sold-out football stadium. It takes concerted effort for the worship associate to rattle everyone into their seats. And there was a time I was trying to find ways to fix this problem, but I soon learned this is not a problem. It's how we worship. What hit me right on the noggin recently was that the message, far and away the number one aspect of those other religions, is actually number 2 with ours, at least at the UUCC. The number one aspect that I have deduced from our method of worship is fellowship. We love being together. And here we are, 50 of us on 50 individual paths to spirituality, all bonded together with this glue called fellowship. Sure, the message aspect is important. You know, how to live our lives guided by our covenant, to name one of the key messages. And sure, we are intellectual enough to sit at our computers to read the current version of the message each and every Sunday morning in solitude. As Spock would comment, that seems logical. But because being together, Singing together, laughing together, and even crying together is such a deep-rooted part of our community. I concluded that the typical approaches to virtual services mentioned earlier do not take this fellowship aspect into account in a satisfactory manner. So, the worship committee, with the help of a few others, got to work. Our mission was to create a virtual UUCC service as close to the real thing as possible, keeping everything as live as possible. It proved to be a challenging endeavor, but this team found a solution while in the vacuum of social distancing. It was like building an airplane in mid-flight. Last Sunday, we gave our Altered Worship Associate script and slideshow a dry run. Surprisingly, we found very few issues. Overall, we were pleased with the session. I put together a brief sermon to test drive the slideshow and a video, which turned out to be a bit troublesome. To my surprise, the test team wanted me to deliver this sermon for our inaugural Zoom service. Susan Landau, who was scheduled to speak today, graciously gave up this spot, and we appreciate that. You will hear from her on May 3rd, so no worries. However, holding Zoom services during this challenging time is only a small part of what we as a church community do. There is so much more that we should be doing. The challenge we have, and we hear that word often these days, our challenge is finding a way to stay connected with a larger community without compromising ours and their safety. So, what is it we need to do? It is vital that we continue to reach out. Make sure those who are isolated have as much human contact as possible. I suspect many of you are already doing this, but even so, go through your list of contacts and just start dialing. Up until this pandemic hit, calling someone whom you have not spoken to in years may have seemed a bit awkward, sometimes enough for you to come up with some lame excuse for calling. Well, not these days. Yes, the person you just dialed for the first time in 5 years will ask, "Why are you bothering me?" But instead, "Thank you for bothering me." We are told to stay in our homes, but we still need to get out and pick up groceries and prescriptions. If you're not in a good, safe enough situation to venture out, if you are in one of those good, safe situations, why not plan it in advance? Then send an email to others to solicit a shopping list from them. This will help keep the number of shoppers in the stores down to a minimum at any given time, reducing the risk of infection by keeping our distance from others. And check with your neighbors. Get a signed letter from them authorizing you to pick up their prescription. Ask if they need assistance with yard work or walking their dog. I am painfully aware times are very difficult for many financially speaking. However, if you are still able, keep making those contributions to your favorite charities. On the other hand, please do not let pride get in the way of your reaching out for help. No one, at least in our community, will judge you. I would feel immense gratitude if someone did me a favor, just as I feel gratitude for being asked to do a favor. But looking at the bigger picture, noting what our society as a whole must sacrifice brings forth a deeper sense of loss, as well as appreciation of what we once had and hope to get back someday soon. Today is the holiest day of Christianity, but parishioners worldwide must remain at home to celebrate Easter. The Easter message of rebirth reads, "Through faith in the working of God, those who follow Jesus are spiritually resurrected with him so that they may walk in a new way of life." A new way of life is where humanity may be headed as we endure this pandemic. Some 4,000 years ago, the Israelites in Egypt smeared the blood of the Paschal lamb on their door frames in order to be passed over by the Spirit of the Lord, avoiding the consequence of the 10th plague of Egypt. Today, we now rub alcohol on our door frames and anything that enters our home to avoid the effects of a silent, invisible, and cunning microscopic killer. With regards to the constant drone of mind-numbing catastrophes unfolding every day on TV, acts of graciousness are often featured as well, giving me the sense that our principles are not the exclusive domain of UUs. And as we search for silver linings just to keep from falling into utter despair, we can hope that these acts become more inherent in our lives across the globe. Wouldn't it be something if murder, rape, graft, and war were replaced by acts of kindness as a result of this pandemic? However, UUism is a far better way to achieve this goal rather than enduring a pandemic. But hey, never looked a gift silver lining in the mouth. So stay vigilant, my friends. Stay tough, stay connected. I know you've heard this many times, but it bears repeating. We're in this together, and you are not alone. Love to you all.
Thank you, Randy. Normally at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the slideshow. Enlarge the slideshow tile to see how to do this. These methods will also be posted in the newsletter and on the UUCC website itself. Please make note of this. Our thanks for any gifts given and received for the work of this community.